who lived in a cottage with her mom and dad. She had a wonderful childhood, going through the meadows and working on the farm and making friends with all sorts of animals and people. One day, sadly, her mother passed away, and then her life began to change. She lived with her father for several years, and one day her father brought home a beautiful lady with two young daughters. And the young girl, her name is Cinderella, found out that they were married. So, the two stepsisters moved in with Cinderella, and they began immediately kind of demanding that she do chores and stuff. So, she was treated a little bit poorly, but, she made do. She had her father with her. Then, one day, while she was still young, her father was going on a long journey. So, the stepmom and the stepsisters and Cinderella, they all stood up on the porch waiting and waving as the father rode out on his business trip. All she asked for was a branch that touched his shoulder, while the other two stepsisters asked for pretty dresses and lace and things. So they went inside and left on their journey. Sadly, her dad died on the journey, and so she was left with the stepmother and the two stepsisters. Because of the financial situation, they were unable to have help stay with the stepsisters. So Cinderella became sort of the maid of the house. She cooked and cleaned and did all the chores while serving her stepmother and stepsisters. So even though it was hard, and the stepsisters and stepmother started to treat Cinderella poorly, she kept up a good attitude with the mantra of have courage and be kind. So she was working and working, and one day there was an invitation set out by the prince to all the maidens in the land to a ball. So Cinderella rushed home to tell her stepsisters and stepmother, and they were so excited at the possibility of meeting the prince and possibly marrying him, being the one that he chose to marry. Cinderella was excited as well. She always wanted to do a ball, and she happened to know an apprentice at the palace that she wanted to meet and dance with. So immediately the stepsisters and the stepmother went to go order dresses, and Cinderella was left to kind of come up with a dress on her own. Luckily, she had an old dress of her mother's that was beautiful and pink and frills, and so the night of the ball arrived, and Cinderella came down in her beautiful dress. All the stepsisters were in their fancy, fine clothes, and they were appalled that that Cinderella thought that she was going to come, and they came and were upset that they thought that she could come with them, and so they ripped her dress and tore off the shoulder and tore a side sash, and Cinderella broke down in tears. She was looking forward to all of that. So the stepsisters and the stepmother left, and Cinderella just kind of broke down. She fell to her knees on the ground and just sort of cried. She didn't know what to do. She said, "I'm having courage and being kind. How is this happening to me?" And suddenly, her fairy godmother appeared and realized that she was having a problem, that she was sad. So she took her magic wand and helped Cinderella get dressed in a beautiful dress, and she made a pumpkin into a carriage and turned some mice into grand white horses that she could ride up with, and her pink ratted dress that had been torn, that was her mother's, became this beautiful ball gown that was blue and sparkly and had butterflies on the tops, and she felt beautiful. So her fairy, and can't forget, she was given 2 glass slippers that fit her foot perfectly. And the fairy godmother said, "You have to be back by midnight, or else the magic will wear off." So she hopped in the carriage and ran to the ball, and it turns out that the apprentice that she met was the prince himself. So she danced with him and spent all their time with him, and everyone was wondering, who is this princess? You know, she was dressed all glamorous, and midnight came, and she had to rush off, and she left the prince and ran, and the prince was dumbstruck. He said he was wondering, who is this girl, and why is she running away, and who is she? They didn't even get each other's names. So after the ball, everyone was home for several days after. The prince went around the whole kingdom with the glass slipper and tried it on every maiden in the land, and finally found Cinderella, and they lived happily ever after. The end.